only country where you can sue the federal government?
No one is above the law. Even the government must adhere to the law. I was the Deputy General Counsel of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. I returned as Assistant Secretary for Trade and Economic Security.
What do these departments do?
The usage of AI, whether it pertains to deepfakes or pertains to bioweapons.
In what sense are you involved with foreign direct investment?
This year alone, they've processed more than 300 filings. Foreign investors are trying to get clearance for their investments into the United States.
Effort there was that how does it become a new engine of economic statecraft?
$200 million, you get 40 billion over 10 years. 85 to 90% of the refining happens in China. The issue of semiconductors in Taiwan is...
I don't think this is going to change overnight. What is the way forward? Sohan Dasgupta, welcome to We the Builders.
It's a great honor for me to be here. Thank you so much, Sufyan.
You're the first person who's been involved in politics who's on the show. Or most of our past guests, some mutual friends have been either in the venture capital space or have been in the entrepreneurship space, building companies. So I'm excited for this conversation.
I'm very excited as well, and it's a great honor for me.
But
to
I'm
be
sure
here.
you had a career before, you got involved in politics. So would love to start there and start with your life journey and how did you get to where you are?
Yeah. Well, thank you, first of all, for having me here. And it's been a blessing to be here with you and to take part in this conversation, Sufyan. So I'm most grateful. I look at it much more as duty and service rather than anything political per se, because it's about serving other people. One has the certain skills. Hopefully, one has a mission. One has a kind of vision for how to execute that mission and that agenda, and it's very important to put all of one's assets to that use. So I appreciate the opportunities that I've been given and the chance to serve. And you are correct that I'm from that world, but there is an element of building involved, right? And creation and construction involved, because when you're in politics, you're effectively building some kind of a policy or program or something like that. And whether it's large or small, whether it's intergenerationally transformative, or whether it's something that will make a difference to an office of 200 people. You're constantly in the process of building something, and in my career, I've been given the opportunities to do that. So I'm very grateful for that, and I'm sure we'll get into those in a bit. Before coming into it, I have coming into politics or service tradition. I'm a lawyer by training. After college, for which I attended Columbia University. I was fortunate to go to Oxford for my master's, and then I attended University of Cambridge for my PhD in international law pertaining to trade and arbitration. And after that, I went to law school at Berkeley, University of California at Berkeley. And then I had the great privilege of clerking for and blessing of clerking for two extraordinary federal judges, one on federal district court and another on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit. And eventually I ended up in government. I was, but in legal roles. I was special counsel at the Department of Education. Then I was the Deputy General Counsel of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. And then I returned to private practice. So I did that. And then in this administration, I returned as Assistant Secretary for Trade and Economic Security. And then I was asked to provide political leadership at the Millennium Challenge Corporation. So it's been a wonderful journey. It's been a blessing, and I'm very grateful for the chances that have come my way.
So, most of my listeners are probably not familiar with any of these government departments, right? So, if you can probably, you know, go into a little bit of depth,
Sure.
though, what do these departments do, and
Yeah.
what was your role?
And I appreciate very much the perspective and the life experiences your listeners have had, because folks in government have a lot to learn from them, and the cross pollination of ideas and the melange can be very mutually productive and beneficial. So, Department of Education. If I may start with that, Department of Education is the federal agency invested with the duty to um, um, uh, duty to execute and implement federal educational mandates. And in that capacity, and there's some changes happening at the Department of Education right now, and in that capacity, the Department of Education can be has been works on Title IX reforms, which pertain to um, the gender. It pertains to then academic freedom and those kinds of things. Under our constitutional scheme, for the most part, the wall-to-wall, much of the governance regarding education happens at the state and local level. Because that's understood to be one of the police powers of the states. The federal government's role is different in that. Now, moving from there to the Department of Homeland Security, there the balance is kind of, the constitutional balance is slightly different, because it's a security issue, and of course states and municipalities, they exercise the police power, but on the national level, national security, those issues do belong to the are understood to belong to the federal government. So Department of Homeland Security is a large federal agency with many components, and the areas in which I was most interested and had a chance to work with pertain to trade and economic security. So CFIUS, which might interest some of your listeners, because that pertains to inward bound investments from foreign countries, because you have somebody who wants to invest in the United States, a foreign entity, and you hear a lot about NVIDIA and others, but smaller entities too, which perhaps are not doing $1 billion or hundreds of billion dollars worth of investments, but they're engaging in investments that are large for their stake. Some of them can be in single digits of millions of dollars. Some can be greater. So I've always been interested in emerging and foundational technology. So understanding that and understanding applying the supply chain resilience of those issues was of fascinating and profound interest to me, and really getting into the finer points of the technology that was being used and how that was being activated, and what the risks were to the United States in conformity with the federal statute. It's called FIRMA. That's the governing federal statute. That was of great, that remains of great interest to me. So when I was working, and then the issues of cyber, issues of the various of forced labor, of supply chain resilience, of quantum computing, all of that was just phenomenally interesting to me. And I found them to be very impressive, and I found them to be very inspiring. You see the kinds of technology and kinds of matters that people all over the world are working with, and they want to come into our country because we have certain fundamental and foundational advantages, structural assets, vital assets that they think will effloresce and exponentially advance and augment their um, their um, um, their business and their profits. That was of great interest to me. And what was remarkable was the fact that you work on it from a legal perspective, right? Which I did, and then things happen, and then you come back in a policy perspective. At the end of the day, you are trying to do right by the country. You are trying to serve your fellow citizens. You're trying to understand and apply what is best in you to the service of something that's larger than you. Right. So that was very interesting to me. And then I moved over to the Millennium Challenge Corporation because political leadership was essential there, and Millennium Challenge Corporation was created in the early 2000s during the Bush administration, and it was focused. It had a different accountability structure, different focus, different coverage than USAID. USAID was more, had a more slightly more covered the waterfront perspective than MCC. MCC was largely focused on transportation, on infrastructure and transportation and energy, those kinds of projects. And there, I discovered and and got to apply my interest in countering America's rivals and adversaries. And got to do that because there were many interesting projects happening. The Foreign Assistance Review pause was underway when I came in, and got to study the various compacts and threshold programs and really think broadly about what is in America's interest in terms of how to transform this into an engine of economic statecraft. That how do we apply this structure, this system, this agency that's there, and what do we do with it? And can it be turned into a vital national security and foreign policy asset for the United States? And the administration's decision thus far has been to do so. And various compacts that had been paused and programs that had been paused have now been reactivated. Nepal, Mongolia, Kosovo, several in sub-Saharan Africa, many in the Pacific Islands, because a lot of it is about meeting the presence of our adversaries with American strength in certain ways, and understanding that whether it's from a perspective of, well, of course, friendship, but also deal making, and how that can accrue to the benefit of American taxpayers. The ROI angle is very important. Countering our adversaries are very important. It can be a project about transmission lines. It can be a project about energy systems. It can be a project about building roads and airports and things like that. And you always ask yourself, what is the ROI? And they have brilliant economists who try to generate the appropriate statistics for that. So I've been very fortunate, and in each of those capacities, going back to the theme of building, I've been fortunate to appreciate that and to build on that and to construct in conformity with the vision of the larger vision. Right.
Okay, so I'll probably dive into each of those departments and how that relates with some of the things you mentioned. But you mentioned your career started with clerkships. Tell us a little bit more about what sort of clerkships were these? What did you learn in that time? Yeah, tell us more about that era.
Yeah, no, thank you. The rule of law has been very important to me. I wanted to be a lawyer since I was 12 years old.
Mhm.
I and The rule of law is important because the whole system falls apart
Mm.
if you don't have a good rule of law, but a good rule of law structure.
Right,
But rule of law is important as a deontological matter as well.
right.
It's not just a utilitarian gesture; it is deontologically important.
What you've lived in different parts of
Yeah,
the world, right? And
yeah,
I've lived in different parts
yeah,
of the world. And what I consistently hear from people who move here is that it's what separates the US from the rest of the world is it's in many ways the legal structure
yeah.
of this country.
Hmm.
Can you also like you did your some of these clerkships in the US federal courts? What makes this country different in
Yeah.
terms of its legal
No,
structure?
absolutely. I think that from the federal perspective,
Right.
I'm going to start with separation of powers and federalism.
Mm.
It's a structural constitution because federalism is the balance of power between the federal government and the states. No, the diffusion of power is very important in certain ways. Now, the Constitution is very is our fundamental law, and the Constitution gives certain kinds of power to certain entities. That the foreign affairs power is largely given to the president, and the national security power, some people say, is largely given to the president under Article 2, Section 1, Clause 1, the executive vesting clause. Now, that doesn't mean that Congress has no power in that area at all. It means that the powers that are given to Congress, then this is the general understanding that many people address, that Congress's powers are specifically mentioned: the power to declare war, the power to grant letters of marque and reprisal, the power to confirm ambassadors,
Mm.
and then those pertain to foreign affairs. But those are kind of spelled out separately. So it means that everything else related to foreign affairs belongs to the president. And that's the view that some constitutional scholars have propounded. But then there are other police powers, basically health, safety, morals, right? I mean, and I'm oversimplifying, but
Mm.
health, safety, morals, those largely are understood to belong to the states,
I see.
right? And then we're talking about the horizontal scheme of Congress, president, judiciary, in that order: Article 1, Article 2, Article 3. A lot of Congress's powers are mentioned in Article 1, Section 8, and that's the power to tax. We have cases about that right now. We Power to govern foreign commerce, power to govern interstate commerce, regulate interstate commerce, and coinage, currency, those kinds of issues. The president's powers include the power to nominate, and then the power to then to wait for the Senate. The House has no role in that, no official role at least, in confirming the president's nominees to consequential positions, and the judiciary, whose power is to say what the law is. So you have that separation of powers, and there are checks and balances,
Mm.
right? And then you have the states with their own set of powers, and starting especially in the era of the Rehnquist Court at the U.S. Supreme Court, the federal government, lost some cases at the Supreme Court regarding the limits of its own power
Mm.
in relation to the powers of the states. And the court became stricter about enforcing the powers of the states at that point. And then all of that in the early Roberts Court, became the big issue of the Obamacare case.
Mm.
And where is the power of the individual and the power of the power of the states versus the power of the federal government? Where is that borderline,
Is
right?
this the only country where you can sue the federal government or like multiple agencies? I think we were talking about building and companies, and SpaceX sued the government back in the day, uh, and then a huge business came out of it, and now they obviously are probably leaders in the space. 90% of the payload that goes into orbit is probably through that company, and uh, I don't know of another
Mm-hmm.
system in the world that where you can do that, where somebody from the market can come in and challenge the government on how they're operating.
I think that there's a precept here in the United States and in the legal system of the United States that there is that no one is above the law,
Yeah.
that even the government must adhere to the law,
Right.
and obviously you have the the general canon of sovereign immunity, which basically says that which comes from Old English common law, that the king cannot be sued in his own court, right?
Right.
But Congress has granted various, but Congress can waive its own immunity on behalf of the federal government, and Congress has waived its immunity in many cases, not in all cases, but in many cases, Congress has waived its immunity or is understood to have done so. So, but you ask a very important question, because going back to the question you ask about, what is it that separates this country from others? I think that the constitutional norms are very important. It's the unspoken and unwritten things that people take for granted. That you have, like, for example, a federal judiciary that has, neither. In the words of, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, of Federalist 78, you have of Alexander Hamilton, in his words, you shall have neither force nor will, but merely judgment. And it means that the federal judiciary it will not let its personal predilections affect the judgment or the decisions it renders. It has neither sword, neither the army, nor the purse, the money to enforce its decisions, right? So why would a recalcitrant president or a recalcitrant party, a CEO, or a recalcitrant official, or anybody powerful obey the judgment of a court that by itself cannot directly enforce it? Of course, I'm oversimplifying a little bit, because if you don't obey, they can issue, they have certain other legal mechanisms at their disposal. But even those are not, they're not fully self-executing, right? They need somebody else to hail somebody, for contempt, right? And if there's a missing link there. There's a gap there. There's somebody else that the judge isn't going to, take off their robe, doff their robe, and do that.
Police or PI reporting to them.
Somebody else is doing something, right? So why is it? And I think that is a question, that is a fascinating question, and that really that really gets to the fact that we respect the rule of law. We respect the fact that the rule of law is important for us as a society, and that's why civic education is important. That once that courts will make decisions. The 19th century president, who said that John Marshall, the Chief Justice, has made his decision. Now let him enforce it, right? He'd said that, and then you go from there to President Eisenhower in enforcing the desegregation decisions of the Supreme Court, right, in the 1950s. So why is it? And does the losing party or a party that doesn't is in charge of enforcing a decision necessarily like what they have to do? No, they do it because there's a higher obligation. There's a higher I don't even want to use the word aesthetic, but a higher value, a higher principle that I live by the sword and I die by the sword. That I must do this because it is right for the country that I obey the court's decision. Because otherwise, my own position is compromised.
Right.
Because you can't pick and choose, right? If you're the president, for example, or if you are a powerful official or powerful anything, then at that point it becomes a matter of, the court has the right to say what the law is. And if that goes dishonored, then I can't say that the provisions of the Constitution that benefit me should now be honored, because it's all in the same,
Right.
it all emanates from the same font of authority,
Right.
the Constitution,
Right.
and that there's a higher duty and a higher paramount obligation to the Constitution and to the rule of law and to our fellow citizens to obey that. So the fact that courts move, the courts respect, move with certain amount of efficiency. Hopefully, cases don't linger for 40 years in the courts. There's an expeditiousness to the way these things are processed. All of that are part. Some of that is, I know of some systems that kind of legal systems within the United States that sort of require a kind of expeditiousness, but a lot of it's by norms. Impartial judges is very important. Impartial judges,
How do you ensure impartial judges? And like, what's a comparable, I guess, legal system you would pick up anywhere in the world that like isn't as efficient?
I think that independent judiciary is a very important thing, and the fact that the presidents may nominate, and I'm talking about the federal Article 3 judges here. Presidents may nominate, but then the Senate has to confirm, right? The president's selection.
So it goes back to the separation of powers.
Goes back to the separation of powers, and judges. I think that when judges, when people become judges, there's a kind of selection process of getting it right ex ante that happens. That you have people of integrity and learning and capacity to keep learning about different areas of law and to get the law right. And again, I think it does go back to the fact, and then there's also obviously checks and balances, right? I mean, a judge can do certain things, but they can be impeached, they can be removed. It's difficult, but it has happened and could happen. There's a reputational risk. If you're a judge, you don't want to be seen as somebody who is not taking their duties as seriously as they ought to. So there's that, and I think that when they become judges, most judges, I would venture to say, they have a certain amount of independence of thought that is reinforced. They think that I'm here in this important role. And if I don't, that part of my commission, an important underlying embedded predicate to my effectively discharging my commission, is that I follow the law and I call it as I see it. And if I don't discharge it that way, discharge my duties that way, then none of this has any meaning, because again, it's the same constitutional rules, principles, norms that dictate me to function that way. They are at the root of they're at the root of the Constitution, the very Constitution from which my own power emanates, right? And so we're all in this together. Everything that I'm doing is going back to that same root. If I corrupt one, I'm corrupting the rest. Because they're all corollaries and applications of the same thing. So you don't want to taint and adulterate the pond. So you need people who have the broader, an uplifting vision to get that perspective, and you need people to have that independence of thought, of mind, of character to conduct themselves appropriately. And And but you asked, what did I learn from my clerkships? I learned many things. I think that I learned the value of empathy, of equality, the dignity of individuals. We would, at the district court where we got to see the litigants. At the Court of Appeals, we almost never got to see the litigants, because many of the cases were resolved on paper, and sometimes you hear concern and consternation among some people that, gosh, goodness, the court disposed of this disposed of this case, this petition, these filings in 2 paragraphs. But what people often don't see is the amount of work that goes on behind the scenes, that we really care about what happened in these cases. And sometimes the records are tens of thousands of pages long. You really dive into it. There are lots of clerks, judges who are thoroughly engaged on every aspect of the case. And from that, you really appreciate, and I hope I appreciated it then, and I've grown to appreciate it on reflection a lot, very much over the years, that the dignity of every individual, every litigant, the statute entitles the litigant to, on the Court of Appeals, Article 3 judges, on the federal district court to one judge. Sometimes they opt for a magistrate judge, or sometimes they get an Article 3 judge, and they are entitled to that. And it is important for us to get these cases right, for the judges to get these right, and clerks to help them get it right. So nothing should be missed. Everything is important. And the equality of every individual before the law. One of the aspects of the judicial oath is that the judge will do equal right to the rich and to the poor, without fear or favor. And that's very important, and that's something that all of officialdom could take instruction from, the equality of the individual, and that everybody's entitled to that. So, the importance of hard work, of diligence and dedication, and because there are many people depending on us, this is not a self-indulgent exercise. This is a serious task to be undertaken with a great deal of solemnity and importance. And somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose. And I was told this or I read this a long time ago, that even when the losing party reads your decision, they should feel like they got an honest shake.
Right.
That their arguments were considered seriously.
Right.
There are, and so which is why it's important to give them that feeling. And somebody's, and then there are cases where people are really having it's a life-changing thing for them, and they should feel that they're not being ridiculed or mocked or whatever, even if the arguments that they're advancing are not necessarily the most robust.
Right.
They should not feel like they're being, because it's very important that they're being they're being derided, because it is very important to them. So those are some of the values, and just generally of treating everybody with dignity and respect, from the humblest person in the judge's orbit to a very consequential entity, treating everybody with that, and that has really stayed with me. I think that as life goes on, when many people clerk, they're in their 20s and 30s, and so they haven't really. They're usually very bright. My fellow my co-clerks and so on, they're very bright, but they haven't really lived life, right? I mean, not to the extent that, and so what I learned from my judges was the deep level of compassion that they showed every entity, every litigant. That was wonderful. Sorry, I was
No, no,
going on
no.
and on.
It's a great. I think like topic of the episode is going to be inside, U.S. law and what makes U.S. different.
Yeah,
Yeah, but also
but there are many other
yeah,
things
there
too. Yeah.
you also spent considerable time at Department of Homeland Security,
Hmm.
right? You were part of the administration in two different capacities. You mentioned that there is an element of building involved because um, a lot of foreign investments
Yeah.
come in, and I'm sure there's a lot of collaboration
Hmm.
amongst different departments,
Hmm.
and you mentioned one of your roles was in the economic trade and
Hmm.
security sort of
Hmm.
part of the department. What was that role? What and like in what sense are you involved with um foreign direct investment, or
Hmm.
in what sense are you involved with just entrepreneurial endeavors, and like, what's the entire like umbrella of Department of Homeland Security? Like, I think
Yeah.
because like you
Yeah.
look at it, you like yeah,
There's a
people,
lot happening
there's a
there.
lot
Yeah.
happening there. It's a big
Yeah.
agency. People
Yeah.
probably don't understand, right?
Yeah.
um
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. So, Department of Homeland Security, it was created at after in the aftermath of 9/11,
hmm,
and one of the reasons was you know that intelligence sharing needed to
yeah,
be more efficient among the federal government's agencies. So um, many agencies were put together in a composite, and so they have Secret Service, which
right,
used to be in Treasury, now in
right,
DHS, and Coast Guard. And Coast Guard status is a little different because it depends on, depends on various other external factors. ICBP, CISA, and many other the functions that the department does. There are many components of DHS, and uh, and one of the aspects of what it does pertains to trade and economic security, and that office, TES, Trade and Economic Security, that is concerned with um, foreign investment review, CFIUS, and in that regard, it is working with many other departments across the federal government and with the White House
right.
on. Then there are like this year alone, there has been they've processed more than 300, I think at this point, 300 CFIUS filings because foreign investors are trying to get clearance for their
Right.
investments into the United States, and in that regard, what they've done is that
Does every foreign investment go through DHS?
no, not. I mean,
Right.
there are, there are under FIRMA, the federal law that was enacted under FIRMA, certain classes of federal
Right.
of foreign investments. It is generally recommended that they seek that clearance if those conditions are triggered, because otherwise it can be divested down the line or
Right.
unwound. So you want to get it right in the beginning,
Mm.
and sometimes you can work out let's say that the committee, the CFIUS, does not feel that they're ready to clear the transaction as is. What they can do is that they can work with you to arrive at some kind of a mitigation agreement that helps, that satisfies the committee that you're on the right track and that the necessary national security interests will be taken care of if they pursue it that way. So that's a big part of it. And in the current era, the friendlier countries, there are 5 nations. They have been given a kind of streamlined, expedited process of getting clearance or having a decision made on their things, because there's the presumption of lower risk pertaining to it, because CFIUS pertains to national security. That's the mandate, national security risk that it presents or doesn't present.
Hmm.
So that's big. That's a significant part of that, of the Trade and Economic Security Office. Then there's Team Telecom, which is more of an advisory function, because Team Telecom, so DHS, Department of Justice, and DoD, they collectively make recommendations to the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, about what should happen regarding telecoms licenses and policies and so on and so forth. But because they have the expertise and the resources to really work through the problems.
Right.
So that's
What are typical problems that you would have to work through that you can share?
So telecommunications carriers,
Right.
they might want a particular kind of license. They might want a particular kind of license to operate in a to operate in the United States, and you try to appreciate whether or not it poses some kind of risk to the security of the country. Then there's another function that pertains to subsea cables and landing licenses. So you have the hyperscalers that are very engaged, engaged in that space, and you try to see if it in any way poses a significant risk, substantial risk to the national security of the United States, because a lot of these go through, the Pacific Ocean. So they are carrying a lot of information, and there are examples in Europe and elsewhere, and you look at the behavior of some of our adversaries and rivals in those spaces. So you deploy those learnings as heuristics to figure out what has been happening, and how we can remediate those things.
Right.
So you have, and there are lots of questions of spectral bandwidth, lots of questions of open RAN, and those matters that the other federal agencies deal with, that falls within the bandwidth of the falls within the preserve of the Trade and Economic Security Office. I also enjoyed very much working on supply chain resilience, and that was fantastic, because you really get to appreciate the significance of critical minerals, for example.
Right.
And that's an important. Then that work carried over to my tenure at MCC.
Right. And so that's how we originally met, right? Like we brought together a group of over.
And it was very gracious of you to make time for that.
Yeah, we got people in the AI super labs involved. We got people in the reindustrialization movement involved. We got all sorts of people in the energy sector involved.
Right.
And I think a friend recently described that you pull a Cincinnatus, right? Which at this new in this new role, what does that like? What does that look like for you looking back, like the that role at the Millennium Challenge Corporation, and how you mentioned that you were trying to at least your effort there was that how does it become a new engine of economic statecraft, right? Like how does this agency evolve into something that's strategically critical for the U.S. and you mentioned that you started enjoying that part more. So please share more about that.
No, that's very kind. Right. And it's getting to know you and our friends, and through that context has been a great blessing for me. So thank you for that, and thank you for always being so gracious. And so with regard to MCC, so because my work had already pertained to countering America's adversaries and understanding the four quadrant strategy of some of our adversaries, and whether it's through Belt and Road Initiative or other
Right.
when the
Equivalent initiatives, right?
I'm sorry.
Other equivalent initiatives, right?
Equivalent
Yeah.
initiatives.
Yeah.
Yes. And because part of my work at DHS had also pertained to Arctic security, because uh, that we had two aged vessels, icebreakers, in the in the Arctic, whereas Russia and PRC had more and growing, and then that is of concern because if you believe in the ad astra to the stars
Right.
maxim, right? Then you want to going back to the old uh, adage I mentioned, you want to meet your you want to do better than meet your rivals' presence in any part of the world with your presence. You want to meet it with strength, right? You want to make sure, and strength doesn't mean that you are pugilistic necessarily. Strength means that you make it clear that you're there and that you are going to defend your equities, right? And so in the context of the MCC, it was rather similar because you see many parts of the world where the U.S. interests, and that can be, like I said, the Pacific Islands. It can be sub-Saharan Africa. You can be, and it's a question of being strategic with strategic steward of American taxpayer dollars. That it's not something that it's not. And being a lawyer, actually, I think that helped me think about it, right? Being a lawyer and having clerked, it helped me very much model this in my mind, that when you are a law clerk and you're helping a judge execute, if you just bear with me with the analogy, execute the judge's mission, it's not the law of Sohan or the law of Sufyan. It is the law of the American people that was ensconced in a formal process, enacted, or then if it's a statute, or ratified if it was a constitutional amendment, or or a part of the original Constitution. It's the law of the American people, and your job is to say what it means honestly, fairly, accurately, right? And so you take your personal predilections, ego, desires, and tendentiousness out of it, right? Similarly, when you are looking after the long-term interest of the United States and the American people in the trade and economic security context, or in any role in an office of profit or trust to the United States, right?
Right.
And when you're entrusted with that obligation, MCC, whatever, in all of those capacities, you're trying to say, this is not about what I would like to do. This is not my personal property that I am distributing, but what is in the long-term interest of the country,
Right.
and the American taxpayer. So you take your own, you excise your own. You don't even need to excise because it shouldn't even be there in the first place.
Right.
Your own ego, predilections, preferences out of it, and then you say what's in the long-term interest of the United States.
Right.
So working on that was extraordinary because I got to meet remarkable people. I got to work with them on what was in their country's interest and in our country's interest, right? You got to meet and work with people in our administration, and what they thought was in the best interest of the country. And of course, our job is to optimize the ROI and for the American taxpayer. Now, there are two manifestations, not two different kinds, but two different manifestations. One is countering our adversaries, right? And in certain regions of the world, why would you give them free rein if you can engage in judicious statecraft and protect the interests of the United States by, whether it's critical minerals, you can work out some kind of a deal so that the critical minerals don't end up hurting you; they don't fall into the wrong hands. Or you can, in some parts of the world, where you know that your security interests are involved, you establish presence there, so that you have an understanding and you have a judicious relationship, sagacious and presbyopic, not just a myopic. I'm going to think in 3-month or 4-month or 5-month spans. I'm going to think in 30-year, 40-year, 50-year spans. What's better for the United States? So, and then you have the dollars and cents manifestation of American ROI, and that in some ways is perhaps more quantifiable. It depends on the situation. That, okay, we build you this LNG infrastructure,
Right.
and or a port, an airport, a transmission line, whatever, and this will help you drop tariff barriers against American businesses. You invite or you adapt your automotive standards to be compatible or aligned with ours, or you make it easier for our agribusiness or somebody or manufacturers to go and export products there, sell products there, and those are dollars and cents arguments where you have very capable economists who can generate accurate results and understand that, and it's good for everyone, and you often have a tremendous multiplier amplifier effect. For $200 million, you get 40 billion over 10 years, right? So that's in the long term
to the economy, right?
To our economy, because
right.
and to our people and our base, and base meaning the tax base,
right.
and to our people, and then there are, in terms of building, I have been an avid proponent of the fact that there are two issues of this epochal moment that people really need to, leaders, and really every individual, but leaders, whether it's in government or business, private sector, or NGO sector, NGO space, they really need to understand and embrace. The two are, we obviously mentioned critical minerals. It's like 85 to 90% of the refining happens in China. I think that's the stat. And then the other statistics about of rare earth refining happens there, and then how much of the AI chip production happens in some other parts of the world, where then the issue of semiconductors in Taiwan.
What is the way forward? This
what is the what?
What is the way forward? Because I don't think this is going to change overnight, right? Like, how does this?
I think we need to continue to work on it,
right.
And I think that we need to. So one is critical minerals, and the other is AI, right? And we need to appreciate that this is, that the understanding of the usage of AI, whether it's pertains to deep fakes or pertains to bioweapons or something like that, or and the fact that this is about infrastructure, this is about data, pipelines and clusters and computation and so on and so forth. Those are issues that we have to be. I can't even say early adopters anymore because it's sort of embracing it. So I was very high on. I was very forward leaning. I would like to think on embracing and pushing forward these issues. So in terms of doing my small part in building out the economic statecraft engine, I felt that those are things that we needed to appreciate. And I think that my background in supply chain resilience probably contributed to that, because when you understand what the stakes truly are all over the world, and down to the core aspects of it, then you can uh, uh, advance the mission that way.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. We'll end with what are your top three maybe life lessons from having served in all these different roles.
Okay. So I think that it's very important to appreciate that erudition and instinct are not enemies of each other. They're not antitheses of each other. That good instinct is refined by erudition, by learning, by expertise, and erudition is incomplete without good instinct. So I think that sometimes there's a tendency to separate the two and say that no, I don't need strong education, strong erudition because I have good instinct.
Right.
I don't think that works. And similarly, the opposite of that, diametrical opposite of that, doesn't work either. You need both. Another lesson I would say is that the importance of civility, treating people with equality, dignity, kindness, integrity, respect is very important, because if you do that, I mean, well, first of all, it's deontologically correct. That is the right thing to do, and that should be reason enough to do it. But even if you're not so persuaded, I think that treating people with that kind of civility, and civility is not just politeness, it's a lot deeper than that. It allows good relations and collaboration to foster, so that as Camus' book L'étranger, the stranger, the otherizing of somebody else because of some characteristic that they have, that doesn't happen. And therefore you're able to work together to the advancement of your mission,
Right.
of your society, of your company, of your country, all of that. I think that that's very important. That civility, in the truest sense,
Right.
profound, in a profound, treating people with that equality, dignity, integrity, respect. And the last one is the value of compassion and empathy. And that's very important, because I have found that when everybody has, in different ways, adversity in their lives, but one of the ways that you can really grow from your own adversity and not remain static or stagnant is by appreciating that, putting yourself, empathy being putting yourself in the shoes of somebody else, and really understanding what they went through. And that will allow people to grow, not only in a professional sense, to appreciate, the next time that they're in a situation where they're about to judge somebody's behavior. All right, let me put myself in their situation, really, kind of a little bit like being a method actor.
Right.
Putting yourself in their situation, in their shoes, and understanding, okay, if I were them and these were the different variables, and you have to do a 360-degree panoramic exercise in your mind, how would I react? And can I say that their reaction, their behavior, whatever, and so on and so forth, are unreasonable? And also, how can I work with them to find a way forward for all of us? What is the constructive next step? Because it's not a win, it's not a victory to just end the relationship and to lop it off and move forward. It is a win to be judicious, sagacious, presbyopic, and which is the opposite of myopic and short-term thinking, being a long-term thinker and say, how do I work with this individual or these people to advance the mission forward? Sometimes it's not possible, but a lot of the times it is possible.
I guess you have to
and we
figure
should
out how
try
to be
harder.
collaborative. Yeah.
Being collaborative,
Yeah.
but being very thoughtful and intentional about it.
Yeah.
So those are, and so adversity really helps us grow
Right.
if we let it happen. So those are the three lessons I would like to share today.
So I'm based out of Silicon Valley, or to spend most of my time there, right?
Yeah.
And now like I probably would be based out of Texas, but both of those places are sort of tech hubs, and people in tech usually don't like laws. So is there something as too many laws?
So that's a very thought-provoking question. Justice Neil Gorsuch recently wrote a book called Overruled.
Right.
So that's a play on words, and over and ruled being two different words in this context. And he was chafing at the and he was pointing out that there are far too many, at least criminal laws in society, and some of them are, some of them some of them are not always useful. So there is that dynamic in society that believes that there are too many laws, and it's the old question. There's that balance between liberty and order, right? And it's a tricky balance, and it's a balance that equilibrium that society has to find between the two ends of the pole, because you want a good society and a good governance, and you want people to have a good quality of life.
Right.
You don't want them to have to chafe under unnecessary laws, right? On the other hand, you do probably want some guardrails so that things don't go, things do not go awry.
So it's a constant work in progress.
It's a constant work in progress, and that's something that every person in society needs to be engaged about and to be thinking about. It's not. It is something that surely concerns courts in some situations, but and legislatures and other actors. But it's really a citizen question. It's a question of being of participating in society, participating in governance, and not ceding one's responsibilities and right of citizenship. So,
Sohan, thanks for coming on the show.